This video is sponsored by Car Vertical. Don't forget to use my promo code HIGHPEAK for 20% off each and every check that you do. Hello and welcome back to more High Peak. Well, over the years I've bought and driven a lot of BMWs. In fact, it's one of my favourite brands. But if there's one model that I'm always drawn to, it's the BMW 5 Series. I just think it's a great all-rounder. For years it's been the executive car of choice. You get that perfect mix of comfort, performance and quality. And, occasionally, when you're lucky, reliability. I also think they're the perfect size car. They're big enough to fit your entire family in, but also small enough to throw around twisty B-roads. BMWs have changed a lot over the years. The cars have evolved, the tech's moved on, but so has the price tag. So in today's video I'm taking a look back through 6 different 5 Series I've either owned or reviewed, starting off with an old E39 from the 90s, all the way up to a 530 E. So if you're considering a 5 Series, or you just like to see how the model range has evolved over the years, then check this video out. Right then, let's get into it. So the first 5 Series to feature on this list is an E39. Now the BMW E39 ran from 1995 until 2004, and it's one of my favourite 5 Series of all time. This particular one was a very cheap example. I paid just £200 for it. In fact, when I say paid, it was a trade-in at the garage, so we allowed just £200 for it. So it was a really cheap car. This was a 523i, which features a silky smooth 2.5 litre straight 6. In my opinion, the E39 5 Series is one of the best looking 5 Series ever made. Anyway, let's take a look at this one. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Can you buy a decent car for £200? Well, no, not really. I think we all know that. But just humour me for 5 minutes, because today I'm in an E39 BMW. And, well, who doesn't like those? Now let's face it, 200 quid isn't a lot of money for a car. But it can still get you one that will do you for 6 months or so. This isn't really a video about what to watch out for when buying an E39 or anything like that. Basically, I took it in part exchange a couple of days ago, and I just love the E39 that much, I thought I've got to film with it. So I thought, could you actually buy a car like this for a couple of £100 and keep it for a few months or years or whatever, without it costing you a fortune? Well, let's find out, shall we? Bangonomics, as it's sometimes called, or the practice of running a cheap car on a shoestring, can be quite an appealing idea. It's an idea that I flirted with myself, but to be perfectly honest with you, most of my day is spent driving things like this. People's stinking, horrible, filthy part exchanges ridden with faults. So at the end of another unrewarding, miserable day in the motor trade, it's quite nice to jump in something half decent. In order to partake in the sub-£1,000 world of cars, you've got to be truly up for it. It's not really about the car itself, it's more about your mindset. This car, for example, has an MOT for around 6 months, which means you could use it for 6 months every day, and then if it won't pass its next MOT, which it probably won't, scrap it. It weighs quite a bit, so you probably get most of your £200 back. So in that respect, it does make financial sense. Also, I don't want to sound out of touch, because I'm quite aware that a lot of people drive bangers, not for a laugh or because it's a fun thing to do, but it's all they can afford. But just because you've got a small budget doesn't mean you have to drive something dull. I mean, look at the Volvo V70 that I paid £400 for that I filmed with a few months ago. Or one of my very first videos was with a Lexus IS200 that I paid just £100 for. So yeah, just because you're on a tight budget doesn't mean that you'd have to drive something boring. I mean, look at this for example. Don't look too hard at the bodywork because the wings are holier than a piece of Swiss cheese. But the rest of it's in really quite good nick. There's loads of tread left on the tyres. The engine is as sweet as a nut. The gearbox is silky smooth. There are a couple of little faults. For example, the driver's door handle on the inside is here, which means to get out, you've got to put your window down and reach around and let yourself out, which isn't the most dignified exit. Also, when I go around a bend like this, one of the rear doors flies open. Now, because I'm the son of an engineer, I've managed to fix it. I think my dad would be very proud of me. So mechanically, this one must have been maintained quite well, because I haven't got a single warning light, and it still drives really well. The suspension isn't all loose and knocking. The quality of the interior is excellent too. There are no rips or tears, or nothing's broken apart from the door handle. You will have to put up with some negative aspects though. As I mentioned, the door handle snaps off, the rear door doesn't latch properly, and if you pull up anywhere it does look like a bit of a shed. You could spend a few £100 on bodywork to try and make it look a little bit prettier, but before you know it, you'll have it owing you too much money, and that isn't the way to go really. I love these old BMWs. Late 90s and early 2000s were my favourite era of BMW. I've had plenty of them in my time, and this one for example, I know you can't tell this, but it's still got that BMW leather smell. If you know, you know. My old 2001 X5 had this same steering wheel. It sounded the same too, the same sort of 6-cylinder engine sound. So if you find something with a few months MOT remaining on it that runs and drives and doesn't leak oil everywhere, then really it's not a bad decision. You can drive it, keep it for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and then scrap it if you have to. The price of metal these days will mean that you get most of your money back. Like I said, I paid £200 for this. If I've got to scrap it, which would be a bit of a shame to be honest, but if I've got to scrap it, I'll probably get £180 back. Well, that was my £200 5 Series. Eventually I sold it for a small profit. I think I got £250 for it. I sold it to a guy, I think he was from Poland actually, but he was built like Jack Reacher. And, you know, the latest Jack Reacher, not Tom Cruise. He was massive. So that was the story with my 5 Series. In fact, should we see if it's still on the road? Let's do a quick car vertical check on it, see what happened to it. Right, let's go to carvertical.com and type in the reg. So, S258 RNX, check vehicle. Right, I'll leave that to do its thing for a second. It's currently checking database in like 35 different countries. So what we're looking for here is the most recent MOT, just to see if it's still on the road. Now in addition to that, these car vertical checks are really thorough. So it'll tell you whether it's ever been stolen, written off, had a mileage rollback, or has outstanding finance on it. And it doesn't just work in the UK either, it works in dozens of countries. So if you're in the market for a used car or motorbike, definitely check out Car Vertical. And by the way, you can save yourself 20% off each and every check that you do with my promo code HIGHPEAK. That's HIGHPEAK all one word, HIGHPEAK, and you'll save yourself 20% off each check. Right, the report's ready then. Let's scroll down. Well, that's disappointing. Its last MOT then was on the 15th of August 2019. Now I filmed that back in 2020, so Jack Reacher must have just scrapped it. Oh well. By the way, if you want to do your own check, I'll leave the link below in the video description. Or alternatively, just go to carvertical.com and don't forget my promo code HIGHPEAK for 20% off. Right, the second one on the list then was the E60. Now the E60 is the generation that came straight after the E39. Now when the E60 first launched in 2003, it was quite controversial. It was a crisp angle design and lots of people didn't like it. You see, up to that point, the 5 Series was always quite subtle, quite conservative. And then all of a sudden the E60 came along, and it just wasn't. It was anything but. The E60 ran from 2003 all the way until 2010. And if you're in the market for a cheap 5 Series, I definitely recommend the E60. There were lots of different engines available, petrol, diesel. You could have gone with a very economical 4-cylinder diesel, or you could have bought a 5-litre V10 M5. So there really is something for everybody, but my pick, personally, would be one of the 6-cylinders. Preferably something like a 530D or a 530i. I think they're the best. Because the design of the E60 was way ahead of its time, I still think it looks quite current and modern even today, 20 years later. One of the best things about the E60 is the way it drives. It's a proper driver's car, and that's thanks to its perfect weight distribution. One of the downsides though was the early iDrive system. It had a very complicated infotainment system that not many people liked. If your budget will stretch, then I'd try and find one from 2009 onwards, because they facelifted it slightly. It got a better iDrive system, they replaced the traditional gear lever with a shark fin gear lever, the whole thing was just modernised, and that would be my pick. Anyway, let's watch the review and see what it's like. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm in this 2003 BMW 530 diesel. This is the 5th generation 5 Series, known as the E60, or E61 for the estate. Sorry, touring. I've filmed with the E39, I've filmed with the F10, and I've also filmed with the G30. So when I bought this car yesterday, I thought, I've got to film with this. It's the only one in the modern 5 Series range that I haven't filmed with. Whenever I pick up a new car, to break up the monotony of my day, I try to work out who the previous owner was. And obviously I bought this from a local main dealer as a trade-in, so I never actually met the previous owner. So all I've got to go off is some clues that are left behind in the car. Detective Inspector Goodwin is on duty. Let's have a look then, shall we? For starters, this is an SE model rather than M Sport, so the suspension's much softer. From that snippet of information, I think it's fair to assume that the previous owner had a bad back, perhaps a slipped disc, and some mild arthritis. We've also got a dash cam, which means the previous owner was careful, cautious, considerate. This has a diesel engine, so I think we can safely say the previous owner was quite thrifty. Having said that, it's the 3-litre straight 6 turbo diesel, so it does have quite a bit of get up and go. So perhaps they were the sort of person that, I don't know, maybe had a Rover P6 back when Jack was a lad. What else? Oh, I found this old cushion in the back, for which I have no explanation. I don't wish to sound ageist, but let's just say I've never found one of those cushions in a Corsa SXi. Radio presets are the biggest clue whenever I play this little game. they tell you an awful lot about the previous owner. If you get in the car and find that it's tuned to Unity FM, I think it's fair to say that the brake fluid hasn't been changed on time. Whereas if it's set to Radio 4, then you can bet your bottom dollar that it has, and some. If you discover it's set to Radio 3, then you can pretty much guarantee there's a spreadsheet in the person's house with every single fill-up so they can work out their average MPG. Anyway, I'm quite impressed with this car. Every single thing works. Even the air conditioning's ice cold, which on a nice day like today is pretty important. All of the windows work, the electric mirrors work, even the engine light works. It stays on just to remind me that it works. It's quite a clever feature, that. Very intelligent engineering. Very good. This 5th generation 5 Series was released in 2003 and ran until 2010. And when it was launched, it wasn't very well received. That was mainly because the E39 was just so popular. It was a good looking car, the E39. It was tasteful and subtle and discreet, whereas this E60 was bold and brash. This of course came from the Chris Bangle era of BMW, where everything went bigger and bolder and a little bit uglier. That said, I never disliked the E60. I always thought it was quite a handsome car. Definitely more butch and macho than the E39, but I wouldn't call it an ugly car. I think BMW did alienate a good portion of the fan base with this car. I imagine quite a few of them jumped ship altogether and perhaps bought a Mercedes W211 E-Class. Bear in mind this car is now 18 years old. I still think it looks quite modern. Everything around it has got even bolder and even brasher, so the E60 I think has aged quite well. Apart from my headlamps, because they have developed some cataracts. Inside it's pretty good. You get a couple of cup holders which pop out of the dash, which are okay for cups, but they're no good for my keys or wallet or phone. The driving position's very good, visibility is excellent, you can have the seat nice and low if you so desire. The seats are also very comfortable, although because these are only the SE seats rather than the hugging M Sport seats, they're not very supportive. In fact, the base is as flat as a pancake. Speaking of flat, the centre console is completely flat, and this was the first 5 Series to do that because 5 Series of old always pointed the instruments towards the driver, which made it feel much more like a driver's car. The E60 was the first 5 Series to feature the controversial at the time iDrive system, which is controlled by this rotary knob here. I don't know why it got so much stick at the time because it's quite simple to use. I remember reading a Top Gear article at the time when I was a kid, I don't know, 13, 14-year-old. I remember them saying something like, iDrive, it should be called iDrive then iCrash because it's just so confusing. I haven't found that at all. Using the rotary dial, you can control the entertainment, the radio, the CD, the onboard information. It's all quite straightforward, really. Actually, saying that, one thing that is indefensible with the iDrive system is the fact that you can control the heater temperature from this. So, for example, I jumped in this yesterday, it was a nice warm day. I used these climate control dials here to set the air conditioning, and it wasn't blowing particularly cold. So I thought, oh well, it's an 18-year-old car, it probably doesn't work. But then I remembered, because I think my old 645 was the same, you have to go into the climate submenu of the iDrive system and select whether you want cooler air or warmer air from the centre vent. It is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Most people wouldn't know that that existed, so they'd just suffer it and end up with a map of Ireland under each armpit. One other little thing I don't like about this era of iDrive system is the screen, or specifically the colour of the display. It's all orangey and jaundiced. It looks tobacco stained like the television in a local working men's club. But I suppose at the time it was cutting edge. I mean, don't forget when this car was launched you could still smoke in pubs. So perhaps it appealed to some people, who knows. The quality of the interior is very good. I mean, bear in mind this car's done 184,000 miles and everything works, nothing's fallen off. The leather's high quality. One thing I don't like about the E60 is the position of the window switches. You have to be double jointed in the wrist to sort of operate them. It's a little bit odd. But everything works. Even the display hasn't gone all pixelated like some BMWs can of this era. The interior space was always very good on this 5 Series. It feels roomy and spacious. There's plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom, plenty of head and legroom in the back. The boot's a very good size at 520 litres. Annoyingly though, BMW made you pay extra if you wanted fold-in rear seats. So if you had large items and you wanted to fold down the rear seats to get more things in the boot, they made you pay extra for that. That's just typical of the Germans of that era. No money, no honey, as they say. Where the BMW really comes into its own though is the way it drives. It's way much better than most modern cars, and you really forget that this car's 18 years old. It has a 50-50 weight distribution, and of course it's rear wheel drive, so it really feels like a chuckable driver's car. There's almost no body roll, it corners really flat. It's just good fun to drive. The 3-litre diesel engine produces about 218 horsepower, but it produces loads of torque, which means there's always power there to overtake. I know it's a bit of a cliche to say something pulls like a train, but this really does. It sounds like one too. The noise it makes when you floor it just makes you think that it's relentless. The power will always be there and never run out. It also rides very nicely. I mean, this model is an SE, so it won't be as hard as an M Sport, but it's nice and soft. Nowhere near as harsh as every single 1 Series or 3 Series I've ever driven, which are just annoyingly firm. The steering is also nice. It's not too heavy to manoeuvre around town, but it feels sharp and precise, even with nearly 200,000 miles on the clock. This has the 6-speed ZF automatic gearbox, which is the one I would go for. It does need to be serviced every 80 to 100,000 miles, just to prolong its life, but it does do a reasonable job. You could have also opted for a 6-speed manual gearbox. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a manual gearbox, in the right car, in the right conditions, on the right day. But most of the time, it isn't the right day, or the right conditions, and I'm in the wrong car. So, 9 times out of 10, I would just opt for an automatic. You spend half your life these days stuck in traffic, so why tire out your left leg when you don't need to? The 5 Series feels like it prefers an auto too. It's too big of a car to be rowing your way around town. There were lots of engines to choose from, starting with the 170 horsepower 520i, all the way up to the 367 horsepower 550i. It's got to be said the 530 diesel is the best all-rounder. Although, remember, it's not ULEZ compliant because of its age, so if you try and drive this thing into London, you will be made to feel about as welcome as Jimmy Savile. What else can I tell you? Depending on which engine you go for, you can have some engine trouble. Mainly issues surrounding the N47 4-cylinder petrol and diesel engines. The most common issue were dodgy timing chain tensioners. Now these would often get brittle with age and just snap without much notice, causing catastrophic engine damage. You could preempt this and replace them, but it will cost you a couple of grand. In addition to that, you can have issues with the swirl flaps where they go weak and break off and again cause catastrophic engine damage. Also, there can be issues with the turbo on the turbo diesel models, particularly with its wastegate. Also, the EGR valves and DPFs can cause you headaches. Now, that makes for pretty grim reading, but all cars have their bad points. It's a bit like the Porsche 996 with its IMS bearing. They don't all go, and that issue with the timing chain was most common for cars registered between 07 and 09. It was quite uncommon for cars around those two dates, but just something else to bear in mind. But the main reason you might want to avoid the N47 engine is because it's dull. The 6 cylinders and 8 cylinders are just infinitely better. The V8s are wonderful engines, but you can have issues with valve stem oil seals, bad timing chains, and oil leaks. I'm not painting a pretty picture for the V8s, am I? Well, the sad thing is, when they're working right, they're glorious. The old 4.4 litre engine in my 645, I just loved. It was fairly sensible on fuel when you wanted to drive sensibly. Sounded great. Sounded awesome when you started it up. And when you wanted to drive it like a hooligan, it went like a stabbed rat. But in all seriousness, you are better going for a 6-cylinder, so either a 3-litre petrol or a 3-litre diesel. They are by far the strongest and the most reliable. I mean, even the 3-litre petrol will return you 22, 23 miles per gallon around town, and 32, 33 on a motorway run. The 3-litre diesel will get you an extra 4 or 5 miles per gallon. In 2008, the E60 went under the knife and had a minor facelift, but you'd have to be a complete anorak to be able to tell the difference. So, I'll tell you the difference. Firstly, gone was this gear lever. It was replaced with the shark fin style fly-by-wire lever rather than this mechanical one. In addition, there were very subtle differences to the front lights and the rear lights. And also the iDrive system was updated, but that was about it. Used prices here in the UK start at around £1,500. That's going to get you an early high mileage model. Now, if you want my opinion, I would go for an 06 or 07 done about 100,000 miles, because there's plenty more life left in that car. I would also personally opt for an M Sport because they just look better, the steering wheel's nicer, the seats are more supportive, and they hold the money better. So that's what I would do.
Now this next one, number 3 on the list, is a bit of a strange one. It isn't a regular 5 Series, it's called a 5 Series GT.
When this car came out back in 2009, I thought BMW had lost the plot. I honestly thought it was one of the ugliest cars I'd ever seen. But as is often the way with BMW design, over the years the styling really grew on me. And now, I love them. I think they're great cars. I think the GT is the perfect option for somebody who wants a 5 Series, but they need something a bit more practical, and they don't want a big heavy X5. Technically speaking now, the 5 Series GT doesn't share its underpinnings with the 5 Series at all. It actually shares it with the 5 Series big brother, the 7. And you can kind of tell, because it is a big old bus. They've got an awful lot going for them though. They've got a very clever boot, clever seating, you get a really nice, bright, spacious interior. And like all the other 5 Series, you get a whole variety of engines to choose from. Again, my pick would be one of the 6-cylinders, so something like a 530D GT or a 530i. The one featured in today's video though is a 530 diesel, and that's got to be the pick of the bunch.
Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So today I'm in a 2010 BMW 5 Series Gran Turismo. I remember the first time I saw one of these cars back in 2010, and to be honest I was repulsed. I thought it was horrendous. I remember laughing out loud because I thought BMW had lost the plot. I thought it was so ugly and ungainly, I didn't think they'd sell any of them at all. But as is the case with most BMW designs, it's grown on me over time, and I actually think it's excellent. I think it's a very clever design and a very practical car. And even now, 10 years later, it looks like something out of a sci-fi film. It looks futuristic and space age. I think its rarity is quite appealing too, because you hardly see them on the roads, although I'm not entirely sure who the target audience was. Although it's called a 5 Series GT, it's nothing like a regular 5 Series. It feels enormous, this car. It actually shares its platform with the 7 Series, and that gives you a good indication of just how big it is. It's massive. It feels very wide too. As I'm driving it now, I can't even reach the passenger side window. So I think it'd be ideal for people who want the practicality of an estate car but don't necessarily want the geeky image, and also people who want an SUV but don't want to be seen in an SUV, and those people exist. This is a late 2009 5 Series GT. This is a 530 diesel, so it uses a 3-litre 6-cylinder turbo diesel engine, which produces 245 horsepower. Now, ordinarily I would say go for the petrol, but this diesel is actually perfect for a car like this. It's so economical you could get from one end of the country to the other without having to refuel. And it feels quick too. It's got an 0 to 60 time of 6.9 seconds, whilst averaging 45 mpg. So if I put my foot down here on the bypass, well, that feels quick actually. That's impressive. Driving along here at 70, there's not much road noise, so it must be quite well insulated. And if I need to overtake now, I can kick down. There is plenty of power there, plenty of torque. And really, you don't need more engine than that. It really is the best of both worlds. And the speed at which it goes from 70 to 90 miles an hour is truly impressive. So the previous owner told me. I haven't done that, obviously. You get an 8-speed automatic gearbox, which is possibly the best 8-speed auto I've used. You're going to think I'm a bit of a hypocrite now, because I always whinge about gearboxes that have more than 5 speeds in them because they're just unnecessary. They do it all for the economy, but it just ruins the ride. And I have to say, this is very smooth. You would never know that it was an 8-speed box. The ride's not too firm, as you would expect with a BMW, but it's also not floaty either. It does feel like a driver's car. And because it's lower than something like an X5, it does feel sportier. But it really does handle beautifully. The car gives you the sense that it's happier being thrown around these country roads as opposed to pottering around town. Another interesting design feature is that all the doors are pillarless like you'd find in a coupe, which just adds to its luxurious feel. I think the interior of this car is very impressive. As soon as you jump in this car, straight away it's just like nothing else, which makes a nice change, because usually day in day out I'm just jumping in and out of boring humdrum cars. You get the panoramic glass roof, which lets in loads of light. You get the tall roof line, so it just feels really airy and really light. I've got the pale ivory Dakota leather interior, which just feels and looks very luxurious. I think the fact you get so much light in here, coupled with the light interior, just feels very classy and very expensive. Because you've got the tall sloping back end, it makes the boot huge. The boot design's very clever too, because you can open it 2 ways, a bit like a Skoda Superb. You can either open the whole hatch, which makes it very easy to load in big items, or you can open just the saloon chute, like a saloon. Although I'm not sure why you'd choose to open just the boot lid, because it's quite heavy to open and it doesn't give you much access. But anyway, it gives you the option. I suppose in a tight car park or somewhere you might just want to just open the boot lid and just throw some things in. The rear seat design is very clever too, because the two outer seats are adjustable, so you can slide them forward or backwards to give you more boot space, and they're also reclinable. Reclinable? Is that a word? You can also recline them. You could also just have this with two seats in the back and fold the rear seat down and use it as an armrest or a divider for your fighting children. So you do get lots of legroom in the back and a massive boot, so it would make a very practical family car. There's plenty of room for a car seat and a pram in the boot. And because it sits a little bit higher, it's easier to get in and out of, and it also gives you more visibility than you'd get from a standard 5 Series. I like the big screen sat-nav you get. I like the big centre armrest here you get, which has also got a USB and auxiliary point. I love the steering too, because it's not too heavy, it's just weighted perfectly. It feels direct. It's rear-wheel drive, this car. To look at it, you would think it was all-wheel drive, but it's not, it's rear-wheel drive. So it does feel like a proper driver's car. I like the layout of the interior too. Everything's easy to operate. Everything's controlled via this iDrive dial. The iDrive system always gets a bad rep. I think it's quite easy to use, certainly easier than a lot of other cars. It's got this dynamic driving control here, so you can select between normal, sport or sport plus. And straight away, as soon as you put it into sport, you can feel the difference. I think if you put it into sport plus, it turns the traction control off too. And the weather is hideous today, so I think we'll leave it in comfort. I also like this storage drawer you get, which is handy for putting your crisps in. I think all cars should have one of those. You get heated seats too, which is very handy for the winter, and because it's a BMW, they always get that hot, you could fry an egg off these seats. So perfect for the high peak area in the winter. The term SUV is overused these days. It's a name that's just thrown at anything that's even vaguely off-roadish. But if you remember what SUV stands for, Sport Utility Vehicle, this car, although technically not an SUV, does feel like a sports utility vehicle. Feels sporty, feels practical, would just make a perfect family car. I always have a whinge about people that buy Nissan Jukes or Qashqais, because I think it just shows a lack of imagination. I know they might need a big spacious car for the family, but to drive one, it's just very boring. I think if I had a young family and I needed something practical, I would want something that's fun to drive, so I would pick something like this. It would make an excellent family car. You get plenty of room in the boot for a pram, you get plenty of room in the back there for a couple of car seats, and yet it will keep the driver happy. It's a win-win, surely. All you'd need now really is a screen here so you didn't have to hear the kids screaming, and it would be the perfect family car. They offer a wide range of engine choices. You can have a 2-litre diesel, 3-litre diesel, 3-litre petrol, or a 4.4-litre petrol V8 with over 400 horsepower. But I honestly think the 3-litre diesel is the pick of the bunch. If you do a load of miles and you want the extra economy, then probably go for the 2-litre diesel. They're okay, they're just not as quick or refined or powerful as the 3-litre. So unless your name's Ebenezer Scrooge or you do 30,000 miles a year, I would always recommend going for the 6-cylinder BMWs, whether it's petrol or diesel, because they're just far better. They're much more how you would imagine a BMW is if you've never driven one before, whereas the 4-cylinders just leave you feeling a little bit cold and empty. The ride's very good too, because it's not too firm. This is only the SE model. You could buy the M Sport model, but honestly that rides like the tyres are made of lead. They've got the ride just perfect with this because it feels soft and supple, but it doesn't feel wallowy. It means that when you go over a bump, you don't shout and swear. Reliability wise, I'm not entirely sure because this is the first 5 Series GT that I've had. I think it's fair to say it would be like any other BMW, so it all depends how it's been looked after. They're quite well built anyway, but you just need to find one that's been maintained well, and then it should be fine. You can pick up early 2009 models with a load of miles on the clock for around £6,000. But for a well-spec'd, nice model like this with low mileage, expect to spend double that. Which is the sensible thing to do, because if you're buying an early one with 180,000 miles on it, it's going to cost you a turbo, an EGR, possibly a gearbox, injectors. So you'll soon be up to that extra money anyway, so you may as well buy the best that you can afford. I can't even think of a rival to this car either, because there's nothing else out there quite like it. But all I can say is that if you want a fast, luxurious, practical family car, and you want to stand out from the crowd, you should definitely consider a 5 Series GT. I've been well impressed with it. Admittedly, it's not for everybody. The styling is a little bit out there. In fact, one of my friends described it as fugly. But there are lots of cars on the market these days with that sloped rear end, so it's not as controversial as it was 10 years ago when this thing came out.
Well, that was the 5 Series GT, and it was one of those cars that I did genuinely consider keeping for myself. As soon as I drove it, I thought, I could live with this. Anyway, I didn't. I got some profits out of it and moved it on. Anyway, number 4 on the list, spoiler alert, this is the best 5 Series in my opinion. It's the F10. The F10 replaced the E60, and it ran from 2010 all the way until 2017. I just think this particular era of 5 Series is the greatest, particularly if you go for a 2015 onwards facelift model. You get a slightly nicer interior, a nicer steering wheel, and just slightly sharper styling. Again, I know I sound like a broken record now, but the 530D or the 530i, they would be my choices. They're everything you'd want from a BMW. They're smooth, powerful, refined, and they're good looking. What I like most about the F10 is that, like most 5 Series, they're the perfect all-rounder, but this is modern enough to live with on a daily basis. So you'll get things like sat-nav, heated seats, sunroof, xenons, cruise control, and Bluetooth audio. And best of all, I think the styling on the F10 is perfect. It's exactly what a 5 Series should be. When they came out, prices started at £37,000, but if you ever look on Auto Trader, you can pick them up now from as little as £2. But be warned, that's going to get you a high mileage, low spec example. So what I'd recommend is that you spend somewhere between maybe 7 and 10 and get yourself a nice decent one. I'd avoid the 4-cylinders because they can have timing chain trouble. What I'd go for instead is a 6-cylinder. And get one with maybe 60 or 70,000 miles on the clock and full service history, and you've got yourself a nice, decent, reliable car.
Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm in a 2015 BMW 520 Diesel M Sport. I've been meaning to bring a 5 Series onto the channel for a while, so here we go. The F10 model came out in 2010 and ran all the way till 2017. And I think, there's no other word for it really, I think they're brilliant. Every single time I get one, I always tax it and use it for a few days and just think, why don't I just drive a 5 Series BMW? Why do I put myself under pressure to buy a Range Rover that I can't quite afford, or a supercharged Jag, or an M3, when for most of the time I'd be quite happy with a 5 Series. I think it's the perfect car to run around in, even if you're a petrol head, which you obviously are because you're watching car videos on YouTube. For the last few weeks I've been using my old E46 M3 as my daily runaround, and that's a car I love, but it does test your patience. Driving to work in rush hour traffic in my old M3. Now the ride's a little bit firm, the SMG gearbox is a little bit jerky around town, and there's nowhere to put my coffee. I know what you're thinking, these are all first world problems. For 90% of the time, the M3 irks me a little bit. It's only when you can exploit a gap in the traffic and put your foot down that you start to grin ear to ear. Whereas the BMW 5 Series is all the car you'd ever want for 90% of the time. If you're the kind of person who shouts at your children for leaving the kitchen light on long after they've been in the room and left, then you'll love the 520 diesel. It's so economical, so frugal. It sips fuel like a polite hamster taking a drink from that little water bottle thing. It's so cheap to run. Also, the 520 diesel is only £30 a year to tax. That's just 30 quid to drive around in a big, fast, imposing, luxurious German saloon car. It's unbelievable. It only has a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel engine, but it produces 190 horsepower. I mean, don't expect it to set your hair on fire, but for most of the time it's perfectly quick enough. If I were buying one for myself, I'd probably go with the 530D, but that's just out of greed basically, because the 520D is more than adequate. There's a huge choice of engines too. It starts off with a 2-litre petrol or diesel, but it goes all the way up to a 4.4-litre V8 petrol. So there really is an engine for everybody and everybody's budget. Even the slowest 520 diesel will do 0 to 60 in around 8 seconds. What's more impressive is the way that it builds speed from around 50 miles an hour all the way to 70-ish. BMW say that it will average 52 miles per gallon, but from my experience that's very optimistic. I've been averaging around 42. That's still very economical for a big, heavy, sporty saloon car. What's good is that if you sat on a dual carriageway like this, and you put your foot down to kick down to overtake a truck in front, you do it with ease. There's plenty of power. I think it looks stunning too. It's a big, imposing German brute, but it looks classy and elegant. I like it. I love all of the design details. I love the LED and xenon lights. From the rear it looks great too. Just from every angle it looks balanced and poised. Everything's in proportion. You could go for the SE model, which is also very good, but this model is the M Sport and I think it looks a whole lot better. There's loads of room on the inside, and I mean everywhere. In the boot, in the back, in the front. There's just loads of room everywhere. Plenty of headroom, plenty of legroom. It's a very spacious car, this. Obviously, because it's a BMW, it's a proper driver's car. It corners very flat and it's very balanced. It handles perfectly. This being the M Sport, the ride is a little bit on the firm side, but it's by no means uncomfortable. It really does give you the confidence to push it. I just can't see how BMW could improve this model. The interior quality is top drawer. All the buttons, switches, dials, gauges, everything you look at and touch feels high class. I don't want to sound like a total anorak now, but look at the steering wheel. It's a work of art. It's got to be one of the most beautiful, well thought out, well designed steering wheels I've ever encountered. It's not just nice to look at, but it's also nice to hold. Typically M Sport BMWs have a spongy steering wheel, which I always think is a little bit gross because it's kind of like borrowing somebody's bath sponge. But this is perfect. It's not too spongy, it's just very nice. There's not much wind or road noise. You can barely hear the diesel engine, so it's not like a Mercedes E-Class. It's very refined. This model has the Harman Kardon surround system too, which is superb. You could spend an extra couple of grand and get the Bang & Olufsen system, but honestly that would be just chucking money away. This is perfectly good. All models are well equipped with leather, Bluetooth, parking sensors. This model even has sat-nav, heated seats. As I said before, it's just the perfect daily runaround. One thing that does annoy me is the seats are only partly electric. Mercedes do this too, and it just winds me up because it ruins the luxurious feel to it. If you want to adjust the seat forwards or backwards, you've got to use this. I imagine you've got to do the same thing in Fred Flintstone's car. It's just a little bit mean and ruins the luxury feel. It's also a very safe car because it scored the maximum 5 out of 5 stars on its Euro NCAP safety rating. The rear 2 seats as well, it's got 3 seats, but the rear 2 on either side have got ISOFIX points for your car seat. So far so good, it's all going very well, isn't it? There is one thing that would put me off, and that would be having to take it to my local BMW dealer. Now, my experience with Williams Stockport BMW has been poor, to say the least. Every time I leave there, I feel dissatisfied. The staff that I've encountered have been rude, abrupt, unhelpful. They don't seem to know what they're doing. And they also don't seem to appreciate the custom, which is odd for a luxury marque. Now, my local Lexus, Mercedes and Audi, that's the opposite service. They always roll out the red carpet. I don't like it when these dealers are sickly and over the top and start brown-nosing you. But at the same time, it's nice to take it somewhere where your custom's valued and you know your car's in safe hands. And that just hasn't been my experience every single time I've used Williams Stockport.
I just want to say a big thank you to today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Car Vertical. Now, before you hand over any cash for a used car or motorbike, it's really important that you do a thorough vehicle history check. Otherwise, you just don't know what you're buying. A car might look okay on the face of it, but until you do a thorough vehicle history check, you really don't know what's lurking beneath. I've been using Car Vertical now for years, and every single car you can see on the forecourt, I've checked using Car Vertical. All you do is head over to carvertical.com and type in the reg or the VIN, and then it produces a very detailed report. So it tells you whether it's ever been stolen, written off, had a mileage rollback, or has outstanding finance on it. In addition to that, it shows you the MOT history, the ownership changes, the spec of the car, the average market value, and a whole lot more. It doesn't just work in the UK either, it works in 35 different countries. So before you complete your purchase of your car or motorcycle, make sure you do a thorough vehicle history check first using Car Vertical. If you use my promo code HIGHPEAK, that's HIGHPEAK all one word, HIGHPEAK, you'll save yourself 20% off each and every check that you do. Or alternatively, click the link below in the video description. Right, enough of that.
Now onto reliability. The last 520 diesel I had was a 520 diesel estate that had done 90-odd thousand miles. It had had one owner and full BMW service history. And that, again, I taxed and used because it was only 30 quid and it was a pleasure to drive. But I was using it one day, I think I was on the way to the airport, and I put my foot down to join the motorway, and it was kind of spluttering and missing. So I thought, it sort of felt like a gearbox fault. So I took it to my gearbox, auto gearbox specialist and did a gearbox service, and it was still exactly the same afterwards. So I took it to my mechanic and it needed a new EGR valve, and that was around £400. That model also, because it was the estate, had rear air suspension, and a couple of mornings I went out to it and it was completely on its backside. So again, I took it to my mechanic and it was one of the airbags that needed to be replaced. Bear in mind this was on a 5-year-old BMW 5 Series, so it's not just air suspension on Range Rovers that can fail. That was, I think, around £300 to get that job done. But on the whole, every 5 Series that I've had hasn't had any major serious faults. So I think it's fair to say that my experience with the 5 Series has been like every other used car. Some break and some don't. The 5 Series has been around since 1972, so it's no surprise that after all these years of chipping away and making minor improvements, they've finally made something that's as good as this. It is a brilliant car. It's all the car you'd ever need. It has to be one of the most well-rounded, complete, medium-sized executive saloon cars on the market. I'd much rather have it than an E-Class Mercedes or an Audi A6. The other competitor is the Jaguar XF. Now, I'm a big fan of the XF. The ride quality in the XF is better, but given the fact that I'm still only 30, I think if I had to buy one of these cars myself, I don't know, it's a tough one. My heart would say Jag, my head would say BM, so I think in the end I'd probably go with the BM. Prices in the UK for a low spec, high mileage, early 2010 model start at around £6,000. Again, that's entirely up to you, but it depends on your budget, but I would recommend spending, I don't know, between 12 and 15, and that way you'll guarantee to get a very good one. If you're a petrol head but you don't have money to burn, you really need to buy yourself a 520 diesel, because it should satisfy you. It does me anyway. It's a brilliant car.
Well, that was the F10 5 Series, and if you find that that's a little bit too old for you and you want something more modern, then you've got to try the G30. Now, the G30 was launched in 2017 and ran until 2023. To be honest with you, it does everything better than the F10, but I still kind of prefer the F10. This might sound silly, in fact I know it will, but the reason I prefer the F10 is because, well, in my mind, it has a nicer steering wheel. It's as simple as that. It's just nicer, it just looks pretty on the F10. I know that's a ridiculous reason to write off the G30, but I like what I like. Anyway, the G30 is a really good car, so if you're in the market for a 5 Series, definitely check them out. Anyway, if you'd like to watch the review of the G30 next, then you can make up your own mind. Now, the one featured in this video is a 520 diesel. Now, again, I'd recommend a 530 diesel or a 530i, but the 520 diesel does a pretty decent job. It isn't thrilling, but it is incredibly economical. Prices of the G30 here in the UK start at as little as £6,000, but again, that's going to get you a low spec, high mileage example. Personally, I'd recommend you spend somewhere between £15,000 and £18,000 and get a nice low mileage example.
Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm in this 2017 BMW 520d M Sport. This is known as the G30 model, which is actually the 7th generation of 5 Series. It replaced the previous model, which was known as the F10, which I was a big fan of. BMW have been honing the 5 Series since it was first introduced way back in 1972. I thought the previous model, the F10, was as good as they could possibly get a 5 Series, but apparently not. It's a bit like Apple with the iPhone. Every single time I buy a new iPhone, I think, how are they going to improve this? And every time they do. Well, it's the same story with this. I'm now going to suggest that this is actually the best 5 Series money can buy, because everything is just slightly better than the F10. I mean, what could they do to improve it in the future? Time will tell, I suppose. I could end the video right there, because this G30 is better than the F10, ever so slightly, in every single area. But as it's a nice dry day, and I'm behind the wheel of this beautiful M Sport 5 Series, I think I'll continue for a bit longer. So what can I tell you about this car? Well, firstly, the model I'm in has a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel engine, which isn't the most exciting 5 Series money can buy, admittedly, but it is the most popular in Europe anyway. Although it doesn't offer ballistic performance by any means, it's more than adequate. You rarely find yourself wanting more power than this can deliver. I'll rattle off some figures. 188 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 in 7.6 seconds, a top speed of 146, and BMW claim 50 miles per gallon around town, and up to 65 on a motorway run. You can now understand why this is the best-selling model here in Europe, can't you? I'll be honest with you, I've been using this car for the last few days, and the fuel figures that I've been getting are a little bit short of BMW's suggested figures. Still impressive. I've been doing 42, 43 miles per gallon around town, and 56, 57 on a motorway run, if you're taking it carefully. But the moment you want to overtake something, you just press the accelerator, and this provides plenty of torque. You really don't need more power than that. It'll sit here quite happily at motorway speeds all day long with your cruise control activated. You can't hear much wind or road noise, it's all quite refined. If you find yourself wanting a bit more speed, you can select Sport Mode, which will change the gauge cluster, everything goes red and all aggressive. Once you've selected Sport Mode, the throttle response changes instantly. It instantly becomes much more aggressive, as will probably your driving style. You'll find yourself tailgating people and flashing them to get out of the way. Then we'll put it back in comfort mode. What I love most about this car is it's probably the best all-round car you can buy, especially the estate version. They're like that annoying popular kid in your class at school, they just seem to be good at everything. The same was true of the F10, but this is just better in every aspect. If you don't fancy the 2-litre turbo diesel, there's plenty of choice, whether you're a cautious Claude or a reckless Richard. There's a 3-litre diesel, there are various petrols, there's also a 550i which uses a 4.4-litre V8 petrol. And that's not to mention the 625 horsepower M5, which gives supercar performance wrapped in a sensible saloon body. You could also go for the 530E, which is a petrol-electric hybrid. Now that claims to do 30 miles on battery power alone. Styling-wise, it's the same as the one before it. Less is more. It's a very conservative car, this. It sort of flies under the radar in most situations. It doesn't shout, look at me, like some do. It's cleverer than that, it's more subtle. This makes a statement without saying anything at all. I love the interior, and again, that's better than its predecessor. Not just the design, but also the layout and the tech, and the textures and the materials used. Everything's just better than the previous model. One small adjustment I've noticed, which makes a huge difference, they've placed the boot release button on the door card. Before it was placed right down near your feet, whereas this is much more accessible. I also like the fact that you get proper buttons and switches for the climate control. They're not buried in the infotainment system, requiring you to go through menus and sub-menus and all that nonsense. The facelifted F10 from 2015 onwards got what I thought was the nicest steering wheel of all time. But they somehow managed to improve it with this G30. It's somehow still as stylish, yet more interesting to look at. It's just really nice to use and operate, and this one's heated too, which is a must. This infotainment system is probably the biggest advantage over the previous model. It's excellent. It's big, wide, easy to use, it's permanently stuck to the dash. The clarity and the quality is excellent. The quality of the display and the graphics are superb. That really would be the biggest reason you'd buy one of these cars over perhaps a last of the old shape. It has lots of features too. Obviously it has things like Bluetooth hands-free and Bluetooth streaming, digital DAB, all that sort of stuff. But you can also connect it to the internet, so it'll tell you things like the weather. Or you can check out the Yelp reviews online and find the best coffee shops in the area. Or you can use Wikipedia to find more information about local manor houses and stately homes. It really was designed for me, this car. On lots of other cars, the screen ends up being touched more times than a card reader in McDonald's, and it ends up smothered in fingerprints and just looks really gross. But with this, you can still control it from this rotary dial. You needn't ever touch the screen, leaving behind a greasy print. It's all very easy to use and operate. Even the keys are better than the previous model. I think they've been designed to look like the BMW grille. Although I might have just made that up. I could talk about boot space and headroom and legroom, but that would just be a waste of time because it's all been designed to be used, so it's all good. The back is big enough so that 3 adults can ride in comfort, and there's enough room in the boot for multiple suitcases, so it really is all the car you'd ever need. BMWs are traditionally always excellent to drive, they're always proper driver's cars. That's how they're marketed anyway, the ultimate driving machine. This is certainly no exception. It's without doubt the best in its class. It's also lighter than the outgoing model, which helps fuel economy and its own agility. Most 5 Series sold are rear-wheel drive, but this isn't. This is X-Drive, which means it's all-wheel drive. You might think that BMW should be rear-wheel drive and the 4-wheel drive system would ruin it, but that isn't the case. For your average buyer on average roads driving to your average job, it's excellent. In fact, better than that, it's near perfect. There's really nothing negative to report. All the 4-wheel drive system will do is give you a little bit more grip as soon as the snow starts to fall. With a decent set of winter tyres, you'll be able to tackle pretty much anything. Next up, let's talk about the gearbox. This uses an 8-speed automatic, which is just about as good as an automatic gearbox can be. The changes are smooth, quick, seamless. It really is excellent. And thanks to the paddle shifters behind the steering wheel, if you do want to take charge, you can change gears yourself. It is just a joy to drive this thing. It handles beautifully and the ride isn't too firm either. I mean, if you're coming out of a Rolls-Royce Phantom, you might think it's a little bit stiff, but for most people, it's just about right. It's also really refined. You'd never know that there was a noisy diesel engine under the bonnet. It's not like a Mercedes E-Class where that's all you can hear. It's only when you really start to rev this out that you get the noise of a diesel. It's also a very safe car. It scored 5 out of 5 stars on its Euro NCAP safety rating. There's a whole host of safety gadgets and gizmos to keep you and your family safe, but none of them are intrusive. None of them interfere with the driving pleasure. It doesn't fire a klaxon when you get too close to the car in front or veer out of your lane. It just assumes that the driver has an ounce of common sense. There are plenty of competitors to the 5 Series. I mean, the Audi A6, for example, I'm sure that's a lovely car, but I don't think the gearboxes will stand the test of time unless you service them regularly. The Mercedes E-Class is also very nice, but I don't like the way that it pairs the FM and the DAB radio stations all in one list, and the engines are a little bit noisy. The Jaguar XF's another one, and as much as I like the XF, compared to this new G30 with all of its state-of-the-art tech, they just feel a little bit little bit old-fashioned. The only thing that I can think of that would perhaps tempt me out of a 5 Series is perhaps a Mercedes CLS or a 640 diesel Grand Coupe. I mean, they're gorgeous and it will offer the same sort of interior. Used prices here in the UK start at around £15,000. Now, that's going to get you a low-spec, high-mileage SE model, which will have more chrome on it than a 1950s Cadillac. One interesting point worth noting, even an entry-level SE model comes as standard with more extras than any of the rivals. I would recommend going for an M Sport model in a 5 Series because the ride isn't noticeably worse, and they look better and they're just easier to sell. Unless you particularly need the four-wheel drive option, a standard rear-wheel drive will do the job just nicely. Make sure it's been looked after, make sure it's got both sets of keys, make sure it's got good service records, preferably from a BMW main dealer or a specialist. Make sure the gearbox gets serviced every 80,000 miles and then it should last. Run it on premium fuel at least every other fill-up and you should be fine. I haven't read or experienced any common issues, so I can't think of a reason not to buy one. The issues that plagued some of the previous models, like bad timing chains and timing chain tensioners, they've been fixed, so that's nothing to worry about anymore. There is a recall on the G30 regarding the EGR valve, so I would recommend contacting your local BMW main dealer and getting that booked in. On to servicing costs. If you find yourself a good specialist, that should be quite reasonable. Now, I've just had this one serviced at the local BMW main dealer. I took it to Williams in Stockport, only because it's quite new, it's low mileage, and it had full BMW history, so I thought I may as well continue that. And it was due, actually it was overdue by a couple of months, it was due its a full service, and that cost me £605, which I know I could have saved a couple £100 by taking it to a local independent garage, or perhaps a specialist. But while it was there, they did the recalls, they updated the digital history, and I just think it looks better when the time comes to sell. So I think it was worth paying extra for. Before wrapping this video up, I should really try and point out some negatives that I found on the car, some things that I don't like, some design flaws or faults. But there aren't any. I mean, seriously, there aren't any. On the video I did with the F10 520 diesel, I seem to remember saying this is all the car you'll need 90% of the time. And the same is true of this one. Even if you're a petrol head, even if you're into cars, this is all the car you need. In an ideal world, if you're a petrol head, it would be great to have something like this as your daily driver, and then a bit of a toy like an MX-5 or a Z4 or something for the weekends. Next year will be the BMW 5 Series 50th anniversary. And that's what this feels like. It feels like a car that's been developed and honed and evolved for half a century.
Well, that was the 520 diesel. But what if you want a G30 that's a bit more eco-friendly? I think I've got the perfect option for you. The car featured in this next video is a plug-in hybrid. So this one is a 530 E. It uses a 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine along with a battery pack. So if you plug this in overnight, you can drive this as an EV for about 15 to 20 miles. Of course, all that technology means it is incredibly cheap to run. But there are some drawbacks. For example, the added weight affects the handling, and you get a slightly smaller boot. Anyway, enough talking, here's my full review.
Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm in this 2017 BMW 5 Series, and I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, hang on a minute Matt, you're losing the plot. You've done a video with one of those before. Well yes, technically I have, and I was impressed. But that model was a 520D. Now this model today is a 530E. That's right, this is a plug-in hybrid. I've often said that the 5 Series is one of the best cars money can buy. The 530D is just about perfect. But times are changing. Diesels nowadays are about as relevant as the fax machine. Try driving a diesel into any big city and people with confusing pronouns will tell you to go back to where you came from, only with more expletives. Thankfully, this hybrid 5 Series is much more socially acceptable. For a start, they, them, won't even be able to hear you coming. It is very quiet, this. Eerily so. Let's look at the facts then. Under the bonnet you get a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine which produces about 180 horsepower. Doesn't sound all that remarkable, does it? But on top of that you get an electric motor which produces about 90 odd. When the old and the new come together, the results are incredible. That feels properly quick. It'll do 0 to 60 in around 6 seconds and it keeps going until it gets to 146 miles an hour. And thanks to the instant torque you get from an electric motor, acceleration from a complete standstill is shocking and silent. Because this is a plug-in hybrid, you can plug it into a domestic socket and you'll cruise around then on battery power alone. If you charge this overnight, in fact it only takes about 5 hours, you'll get a range of around 30 miles the next day. Now you might snigger at that, but if you think about it sensibly, that'll cover most people's commutes. Most people could drive it 25 miles from their house to the job, charge it while they're at work, and then drive home again for free. It'd certainly cover my commute anyway. I charged this in the garage overnight, and when I jumped in it this morning I had a range of 28 miles. I've done around 5 miles in it so far, and it's currently showing me a range of 19 miles. But the electric range depends on many things, for example the outside temperature, how you drive it, whether you've got your heated seats on or your air conditioning on, all those sorts of things. The good thing about this plug-in hybrid business is that when your battery range goes to 0, you can just run it on petrol. No range anxiety, no sweaty palms. In the real world, it just means you'll never be panicking looking for a plug socket. This, to me, is the best of both worlds. We're all being forced right now into EVs, which, to be honest, terrifies me. I just don't think we're ready, and I don't think it's the answer. What I think is that it's a knee-jerk reaction, and I think it's a big mistake. The plug-in hybrid just makes much more sense. You can whiz around in utter silence, but if, for example, you need to do a 200-mile trip to the capital this afternoon, you can. You don't have to worry about charging it up. And you can still use it to go on your summer road trip to Antibes without the fear of running out of electricity. Or without having to work out the French for, excuse me, do you have a 3-pin to 2-pin Euro-style plug adapter, s'il vous plaît? It's ideal. It feels much more civilised than the diesel. There's no vibrations, there's no noise of a clattery engine. It feels really refined. Of course, you'll argue that the regular diesel engine is extremely fuel efficient. It is. It'll average the best part of 50 miles per gallon. So you might be wondering if this plug-in hybrid version is that much better. Is this worth paying the premium for? Well, BMW claim that this will average 141 miles per gallon. 141. I think that claim's a bit misleading, to be honest, because that takes into account the 29 miles of range on the battery. And to be able to compute that sort of calculation needed, your name would have to be Carol Vorderman. So we've got 29 miles range, petrol costs £1.68 a litre, it'll do 40 miles per gallon from the petrol, electricity costs £2.22 per kilowatt, times that by 6, multiply it by 82, carry the 4 over, 141 miles per gallon. Voila. It's all a bit confusing, isn't it? But what I can tell you is, in the real world, I've driven from Romley to Buxton on electricity alone, which has sort of made me feel a bit better inside. Don't feel as wasteful. With regards to the running costs, I think what you've got to remember is that once the battery is completely depleted, then you're just running a 5 Series with a 2-litre petrol engine, so that'll only do about 40 miles per gallon. What you've got to do is try and eke out as many miles on electricity as you possibly can. But that's perfectly doable. You just find yourself doing it naturally with any hybrid. Apart from those moments when you drive this like a member of the Women's Institute because you want to eke out as many miles on electricity as you possibly can, it does feel like any other 5 Series I've driven. Which is to say, very good. I love the 5 Series. They've got the mixture right between comfort and sportiness. I think the real selling point with this car is that it looks just like any other regular 5 Series, so you won't look like some sort of virtue signalling twonk. Take right now, for example, I'm sat here at 60 miles an hour, just being overtaken by a Fiat 500, which is quite embarrassing, and I'm running on battery power alone. It's much quieter than a diesel, and even a petrol. It's just very civilised. I can now see why EV drivers look a bit smug. Just brings it out in you. The 530e does weigh quite a bit more than your average 5 Series, but you'd never know. It handles beautifully, as every other 5 Series I've ever driven has. The steering's just about perfect, there's no body roll. It is, as I keep saying, about as good as it gets. The inside's all sensibly laid out, and it's about as luxurious as you'd expect. You get sat-nav, heated seats, DAB, 2 cup holders, plenty of storage, a nice comfortable armrest. All of the things you'd expect from a car like this. It's a really easy car to live with. And the quilted leather you get on the seats of this particular model is beautiful. It has an 8-speed automatic gearbox, just like every other 5 Series. And just like every other 5 Series, it's excellent. The only thing that's worse on this model is the boot space. They've got to put those batteries somewhere, and they've chosen to put them under the boot floor. So the cargo space has been reduced from 530 litres down to 410. But that's still plenty of space in my opinion. You'll easily get a couple of suitcases in there without any issues. I love the 530 diesel, but having driven this one now, I'd definitely opt for this. It's a no-brainer. You'd have to know this area well for this piece of information to be relevant, but I've just driven from Romley to Tideswell and I'm still on battery power. The petrol engine just hasn't kicked in once. It's so smooth this, you'd almost think there's a V12 under the bonnet. You just can't hear it or feel it. With this 530e, BMW have turned a good car into a great one. That's mainly thanks to the fact that it still has an internal combustion engine on board. If this were a full EV with a range of 220 miles, I'd now be panicking thinking where I'm going to charge it. But I've got no issues at all, I've still got half a tank of petrol. There is one negative with the 530e, and that's the range. You see, with a 530 diesel, or a 520 diesel certainly, in the right conditions you'll get about 800 miles from a full tank. This will only do about 400 between fill-ups. Still, that's not much of an issue, is it? The 530E was available from 2017 onwards, and used prices here in the UK start at around £17,000. But that's going to buy you a low spec model with about 130,000 miles on the clock. You'll have to spend mid-20s to find one that's done less than 60,000 miles. Reliability-wise, it's a bit of an unknown, but what I would recommend you do is that you service it regularly at your BMW main dealer. That way you'll always be up to date with things like software updates, which is a big deal these days, even more so on a car like this. Right, on my little battery gauge now it says I've got a range of 0 miles, and yet I'm still running on electricity. Any minute now I'm expecting the petrol engine to kick in. Every time you use the brakes or go down a hill, it regenerates and puts some charge back into the battery. So if you were to drive this very gingerly, you would get extra miles out of it. My range now says 0, and yet we're still on battery. This is incredible, this. If you think pragmatically, there's less to go wrong with this than a diesel. There's no DPF, no AdBlue, no dual mass flywheel, no EGR issues. All those things that can be common on a diesel, this just doesn't have. Plus, petrol's slightly cheaper than diesel, and you don't get a horrible oily nozzle at the pumps. I suppose if you're unlucky, you could have issues with the 2-litre petrol engine, issues with the turbo, timing chain, that sort of thing. But if you service it properly, then that shouldn't happen. I just think by choosing one of these, you're basically future-proofing your motor in. I mean, I love the 530D, but I'm not sure I'd hand over £20,000 for one right now in this current climate. Euro 6 diesels are fine for now, but how long before they move the goalposts again? You'd be better off looking for the hybrid version, just for peace of mind, if nothing else.
Well, I hope that helped to narrow down your search for a 5 Series. My pick would still be the F10, but if your budget won't stretch, then I don't think you'd be too dissatisfied with an E60. Or if you want something more modern and you don't mind the ugly steering wheel, then definitely a G30. But yeah, that's my recap of the 5 Series. If you're in the market for a 5 Series, I hope that helped. If you're not, then I hope you learned something. By the way, if you're enjoying these buyer's guides, let me know which makes and models you'd like to see featured next. But yeah, thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. I'll leave the links below. And I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.